Thanks for joining me for this edition of the Author's Corner, brought to you by KNEO 91.7 FM The Word. I'm Roberta Foster, and today I welcome Heather Kaufman to Author's Corner, and she has written the book On Living Stone, Salome's Story, part of the Women of the Way series, and it's published by Bethany House, and she'll tell you more about how to find the book at the end of the program. Let me tell you a little bit about Heather. She is the author of multiple books and devotions, praised by Kirkus Reviews for writing a charming and well-crafted tale. She delights in highlighting the goodness of God through storytelling, and when not reading, writing, or accumulating mounds of books, Heather can be found exploring new parks with her husband and 3 children near their home in St. Louis, Missouri. And so we've got kind of a, quote, local author by being from Missouri. Heather, welcome to Author's Corner.
Hi, Roberta. Thank you so much for having me on.
Well, as I mentioned in the introduction, you have written other books in the Women of the Way series. Why don't we start with just a quick overview of what the other 2 books are?
Absolutely, yes. So this is a 3-book series. They do not need to be read in order. There's the Women of the Way series, and really the heart behind them is to view Jesus through the eyes of some of his lesser-known female followers. So they're connected in that way, but again, they can be read in any order. The first book is Up From Dust, and that one features Martha of Bethany. So she's arguably my probably best-known heroine. She's the sister of Lazarus and Mary. And so we trace kind of a backstory. Each book is divided into part 1, part 2. We get kind of a backstory of that character before they meet Christ, and then that part 2 is when they meet Christ and how he upends and just changes everything. And so that part 2 is where we get some of the known events from Scripture. So the first book features Martha. The second book features Joanna, which she's not very well known. She's named only twice, both times in the Gospel of Luke. And she is a financial supporter of Jesus' ministry, and she's also married to Herod Antipas's steward. So she walks in very different circles than most of the other disciples. So that was a fascinating one to write and research. And then this third book is Salome, who is the mother of the apostles James and John, so the sons of thunder. She's the one who asks for the places of honor on his left and on his right for her boys. So each of these heroines are kind of, the lesser known, but they all ministered to, supported, walked with Jesus during his earthly ministry. And so the hope is with these books to just kind of take a fresh perspective on his ministry by kind of walking in these women's sandals, so to speak. Mm-hmm.
Well, that's great insight. Okay, so as the mother of James and John, the Sons of Thunder, does the name for the boys have any reflection on their mother?
Yes, right? So they're Sons of Thunder, and they get that thunder somewhere, right?
Right.
Yeah, and really, in constructing her character, I did really rely on, okay, what do we know about her from Scripture? And I did, she's bold. She comes to Jesus it's humbly. Like when you look at the text, she's bowing before him. The King James Version even says that she comes in worship. So there's definitely a posture of reverence here. But it's still a bold request of Jesus. And so I just was like, okay, maybe she's a woman who knows what she wants and she's going to go after it, and maybe she's the thunder here, So it was fun to kind of imagine her personality as that type of woman who's not afraid to speak up and to go for what she wants, and how maybe her son's zeal and passion, they maybe see some of that or are encouraged by that with their mother. So, yeah, definitely I drew on that in constructing her character.
So as you have already mentioned, she's the one that went to Jesus and said, could you put my sons on your left and on your right? maybe in a humble position, but she's still looking out for the well-being of her sons. Tell us how Jesus' response to her request causes Salome to have to surrender to the will of God for her sons.
Yes, that's a great question. So this request comes toward the end of Jesus' ministry. It's very close to the cross. And he had just promised them the 12 apostles' thrones in Matthew 19. And so this request we see a chapter later in Matthew 20. So she's taking him at his word. And they have been walking with Jesus for a really long time at this point. John, her son John, is one of the first to follow Jesus, because we see in the Gospel of John that an unnamed disciple, which most scholars agree is John, and then Andrew, followed Jesus at the word of John the Baptist. So this family was really intimately connected with Christ from the very beginning. And we know, too, that James, John, and Peter are the three inner apostles who were with Jesus for all those intimate major moments like a transfiguration and things like that. So I could see from an earthly point of view, her request makes kind of a lot of sense, right? You know, she's thinking, my two boys have been with you from the beginning. Who better to sit by your side than, two men who have from the beginning? So yeah, there's a lot that goes into this request here, but it's interesting that Jesus does not meet this request with a rebuke. So earlier when James and John, in another infamous moment, they ask for fire from heaven to decimate the Samaritan village, and he rebukes them there. He strongly rebukes them there. But here, and we know from various accounts that it was all three that came, because another gospel lists James and John as coming with a request. Matthew lists the mother. And so from what I read, it sounded like this was a group effort. And so it's interesting, though, that this request is not met with rebuke. Instead, Jesus just says, you don't know what you're asking for. Can you drink my cup? And to me, there's so much. You know how sometimes you just envision the tone of voice. You're like, I wish I could just be there and hear the tone. And it to me, this sounds like it's dripping with compassion and sorrow, because he's about to drink the cup. He's about to drink the cup. And when we look and we see what happens to these apostles, they also drink the cup. James is the first apostle to be martyred. And John, he's the last apostle, but he ends up in exile, right? Where he gets the revelation from Jesus. And so he knows that both of these apostles, these beloved apostles, will drink the cup in their own way. And I just imagine some sorrow here and compassion. And it's interesting to me, I had to really put myself in the mindset of a mother who's hearing these words, because then he said, you will indeed drink of my cup, but to sit on my left and my right is not mine to grant. And so I'm imagining from a mother's point of view, what does it mean that my boys are going to drink of the cup? And then as she walks through that Passion Week of Christ, and she's there, she's named as present at the foot of the cross.
Wow.
And what is on Jesus' left and on his right? It's not a throne, it's a cross. And did those words come back to her? You will indeed drink of my cup. And who else is at the cross with her? It's her own son, John. And Roberta, this was the part of my research and writing where I just got really emotional, because I could not even imagine a mom standing at the foot of the cross of her son's rabbi, right? In the role of the disciples to become just like their rabbi. And I just have to wonder, did she think is it going to be my son next? And she stands there bearing witness. She stands there bearing witness. And I just think that had to take so much surrender to stand there bearing witness with your son. And then what joy, because we know that the story doesn't end there, praise God, that she also witnesses the resurrected Christ. And again, it's a question I pose in the novel. What does it mean to follow your rabbi's footsteps into a grave and back out again? And it's just this upside-down way of thinking of the path of glory leading to a cross before arriving at a throne. And it's so different from what they imagined. It's so much broader, deeper, richer, and better.
Mm-hmm. Today I have the pleasure of talking with Heather Kaufman, and she has written the book On Living Stone. It's published by Bethany House. You're listening to Author's Corner, and I'm Roberta Foster. You also included some other interesting themes in the book. It addresses what it looks like to follow Christ when family members don't, and how to love family you fundamentally disagree with. So tell us how you included that theme into the story.
Yes, this was definitely, I feel like, such a timely theme, because I think we all know what it's like to have those we love who we just disagree with on some pretty big issues. And it's like, how do we exist peacefully, and how do we love well when we're just on differing sides of this thing? And so in the book, I imagine, because we know Salome and Zebedee, they have a fishing business, and I imagined in that part one backstory piece how they came about, growing that business, and I have them moving from Bethsaida to Capernaum, and I imagine a character, and I'll try not to give things away, but there's a character that is instrumental in helping them establish like some big clients in Jerusalem. And so this character is a family member to them. So he's a brother-in-law to them. And I imagine him as then in part two, he plays a bigger role of he's one of those teachers of the law that comes head to head with Jesus, right? And so here you have Salome and Zebedee with not only a brother-in-law, but someone who has been influential in helping them establish their business, who is like, what are you doing following this rogue teacher? He has such disrespect for us, for the Pharisees, for the law, for all. He's healing on the Sabbath. He's doing all of these things. And so it really becomes a sticking point. And I show Zebedee and Salome having somewhat differing reactions on how to deal with that, of Zebedee wanting to smooth over ruffled feathers, and Salome much more passionate and like, how dare he speak to us like this? And, and so it causes some tension in their marriage too, because both of them are united in their belief and following Jesus, but they're trying to tread carefully. And again, without giving too much away, there's a moment where Zebedee really has to come up against it and be like, okay, am I going to stand by what I believe, even if it's going to cost me? And so there's a cost to discipleship, and both Zebedee and Salome have to wrestle with the cost in their own ways. And for Zebedee, it's very much tied to the business that he's spent his life building. Yeah. And so, again, it's just this idea of humbly interacting, like, how do you love well, but still presenting truth? And I think that's something that they have to wrestle with. And even the wife of this family member, so the sister, encouraging her of like, a righteous wife will lead her husband to truth. A righteous wife will show the light to her husband who is walking in darkness. And so there's just this tension that undergirds of how do I, loving well doesn't mean letting someone remain in blindness, right? And so how do we speak truth in love? How do we put personal offense aside to be a witness? So it's definitely a lot of tension throughout the book as the characters have to wrestle with those things.
Well, you have definitely included a lot of very thought-provoking themes throughout your book. So this will be a great read for those that will pick up a copy of Heather's book. It's called On Living Stone. And so before you leave us, Heather, tell our listeners how they can find out more about this book, the others that you've written. Do you have a website, et cetera, et cetera?
Yes. Yeah. So a great way to connect with me is my website, which is hmkstories.com. There you can sign up for my author newsletter, which I've titled The Stories and Sundries Mini Mag. It's a Substack newsletter that's free to subscribe to, and I do monthly emails with fun things, giveaways, and just news, insider news, and things like that. So signing up for my newsletter would be a great way. But I also have a landing page for each of my books on my website. So it's hmkstories.com/ and then the book title, On Living Stone, Before the King, Up from Dust. And there's just lots of extra resources on those landing pages. I have a YouVersion Bible reading plan for each of my books, a book club guide for each of my books. Before the King has an additional bonus epilogue, an expanded author note. So there's just lots of extra goodies on those landing pages. So definitely check out my website.
Fantastic. So one more time, the book today is On Living Stone by Heather Kaufman, who I've been talking with today. We certainly thank Bethany House for sending us a copy of the book. And Heather, it's been a delight chatting with you. Thank you so much for your time.
Well, thank you so much for having me on, Roberta. It was a delight.
To our listeners, if you'd like to hear this interview again or share it with another, you can now find it on your favorite podcast platform or go through kneo.org. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is Roberta Foster on the Author's Corner. Join me again next time.
Do you have 5 minutes for God? I'm Pastor Ed Wilson, and I believe there's no better way to begin each morning than spending a little time with Him. That's why every weekday morning I bring you a short devotional broadcast designed just for that. Look up God's 5 minutes wherever you get your podcasts to kickstart your spiritual walk for each day. We'll always do it in 5 minutes or less. Have you talked to God today?